This quick video will go over information literacy here at Delaware Tech, also known as the CRAAP test, C-R-A-A-P, Currency, Relevance, Accuracy, Authority, and Purpose. In this presentation, we'll be talking about how to evaluate articles that you've found, whether they're articles in the database or articles on the internet. It's really important that you choose credible material to use in your writing, especially if you're doing any kind of research or trying to support your arguments in some way. Your information must be credible. And so we're going to evaluate sources using what we call the CRAAP test: Currency, Relevance, Accuracy, Authority, and Purpose. The first metric is currency, and essentially that just means, is this information current or up to date? And it's hard to just choose a number and say, well, it should be within 5 years, or it should be within 3 years. The truth is that currency is going to vary depending on the topic that you're researching. In some fields, there's a lot of good research that's a little bit older, but still valid. In other fields, things are changing so fast that you really need to have very current, up-to-date information. So I can't give you a number in terms of how to determine currency. You really have to use your critical thinking skills and decide what is current for your topic. If you're not sure, you can always ask your instructor. Essentially, what you need to do is look at when this information is written and has it been maintained or updated. So if you are on an internet source, check to see if all the links work. See if this seems like it's been maintained or if this is old, outdated, unmaintained material. The next metric, I forgot that we had examples in this presentation. So this is an example of how we determine currency. So the article on the left, Article A, is from May of 2019, whereas the article on the right, Article B, is from February of 2013. The question here is to think about this topic and think about whether this is something that has changed a lot since February of 2013, or whether you think that information would still be valid. And I would argue that a lot has happened since 2013. And in this case, Article B would not be current enough to be credible. I'm not even sure that Article A would be current enough these days. I think a lot has happened even since 2019. The second metric is relevance, and relevance simply means, is this information related to the topic that you are researching? Related and significant. So we're asking ourselves, does this directly answer your research question, or does this directly support the point that you're trying to make? Sometimes an article might be related in terms of it's about the same topic, but it's kind of talking about something different, and so then it would not be relevant in that case. So you want to try and make sure that it's targeted exactly to what your point is. You also want to make sure that the information is being presented at an appropriate level. You don't want, scholastic, something written for elementary students to be used in a research paper, but you also don't want peer-reviewed graduate level research that maybe you can't really understand or get through the jargon, right? It doesn't help to have information that is too advanced for your research task either. It's also important to compare all of your sources together and try to determine whether or not this source provides something new and unique and useful for your research. If all of your sources are saying the same thing, then you kind of have to decide which one is the most relevant to your topic. In this set of examples, we have Article A, which is a little bit more specific. It is cybersecurity trends for 2018 and 19, whereas Article B is a little bit more general. It's simply about cybersecurity. kind of in general. And there are some options where you can narrow that down. The key here, and you'll see this in the discussion box at the bottom of the screen, the key here is that you can't really determine whether an article is specifically relevant or not until you've decided on an appropriately focused topic. Some information that's out there is very broad and general, and some information is very, very specific and might not fit the direction that your paper is going. So you do need to make sure that you have a strong thesis statement and you know exactly what it is you are trying to prove in your research, so that you can know exactly what kind of support that you need. The next metric is accuracy. And obviously you don't know always whether information that you found is accurate or not. So instead you kind of have to use some of the clues that are available to you. You can ask yourself, where did the author get this information? Are there links? Do they provide references? Do the sources that the author is referring to seem credible? You can also check for errors and accuracy in the material itself. If the site that you founded is full of errors, or if there are a lot of mistakes in the writing, then it could be that this information is not peer-reviewed, it hasn't been proofread, it hasn't been vetted by anyone. It's also important to note whether or not the information is similar to other sources that you're finding. There may be something that's completely out in left field that is saying something different from all of the other accepted sources. That would certainly make you question accuracy. In this particular example, in Article A, we have the state higher education data. Here's a table here, and there are links to the original reports from the Urban Institute. Whereas on the right-hand side, in Article B, we have an article simply titled, "Why the Cost of College and Student Loan Debt Won't Go Down." So there is a link in Article B to Student Loan Hero, but we're not sure if that's really a reputable site or not. And if you look at some of the links, you'll see how to earn more money, and escape student loan debt. This feels like it might not be as accurate or credible as the information provided over here in this chart. So you definitely want to look at some of the clues available to you when you're trying to determine the accuracy of information. Authority is the next metric that we need to evaluate, and we need to ask ourselves essentially who is responsible for providing this information. What are their credentials? What is their experience? Are they an expert? We also want to look at the organization or the source who published this. Is that organization reputable and trustworthy? Is the author or the organization biased? Do they have a very specific agenda that they're trying to promote that would lead them to providing information that's maybe not objective? We also can look at the web page domain in this case. .edu sites and .gov sites are very tightly controlled. Information that's published on those sites is generally vetted by multiple people before it ends up on the website. .com, .net, and .org can be published by anyone. This is a mistake that many students make. They think that a .org is more credible than a .com. But I assure you, anyone can purchase a .org domain name and they can put anything they want on that site. So do not assume that because a website is .org that it is automatically credible. You still have to apply the CRAAP test and check all of the metrics of the information. It's also important to keep in mind whether the web page is being published by an individual. There are a lot of blogs out there that are not vetted by anyone. No one else is reviewing this information. You can put up whatever you want on a blog. And so there's no guarantee that that information is accurate. It might be accurate, but there's no way to know that. So it's much better to stick with sites that are published by reputable, trustworthy organizations. It's much better to stick with authors who have some credibility. They have education and experience and credentials that mark them as experts in the field. In this particular example, we have Article A from The Nourished Life. It seems to be written by a lady named Elizabeth, who created The Nourished Life in 2009. Here you'll find my favorite delicious healthy recipes, DIY tutorials, home remedies that work, blah, blah, blah. On the right, we have Article B, published by Harvard Health Publishing, Harvard Medical School, Which Diet is Best for Long-Term Weight Loss. So we can see that on the left-hand side, we don't really know anything about Elizabeth. We don't know anything about her credentials or her education. We don't know that she's an expert. We have no knowledge of whether we should trust her or not. The website itself looks like it's a blog published by her, and there aren't really any links that explain where she's getting any of her information. Whereas on the right-hand side, we know that Harvard is a very reputable source. We see that the author here has some credentials. There are some links here to outside sources. I would certainly be comfortable concluding that Article B is the more authoritative example. The last metric that we need to look at is purpose. And the idea behind questioning the purpose of an article is that we need to be careful of articles that are designed to persuade us to do something. If the article is written specifically to be persuasive, then we need to be aware of that. It doesn't mean that the information can't be used or that it shouldn't be believed, but we do need to be at least aware and thoughtful of that fact. We also want to stay away from information designed to entertain us. Particularly when we're doing research, we want informative articles, and articles that are objective, that presents both sides of the information, or if they are biased, at least biased in a way that allows us to make our own decision. So you want to ask yourself if the site or the organization is biased or whether it's objective. Does the author have anything to gain by trying to convince the audience to agree with them? And do you think that the information is balanced? Sometimes you need balanced information that presents both sides of a topic. Sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes it's okay if an article is only presenting one side of the story, but it needs to at least be objective information and accurate, right? It needs to at least meet all of the other metrics, and you should at least be aware of the purpose. It might not make or break the article, but it's important to be aware of. So these examples here show on the left-hand side, we have a database that provides data that has been gathered by the National Greenhouse Gas Inventories Program. And so this obviously is just data being presented. It even says where users can find emission factors and other parameters that can be used. The responsibility for using this information remains with the users. So they're saying, here's the information, do with it what you will. On the right-hand side, Article B says how climate change plunders the planet. A warming Earth disturbs weather, people, animals, and much more. So we have a much more biased, unobjective, we call that subjective, view on the right-hand side. I'm not sure that Article B is credible. It is particularly asking if you can help, how we get results, donate now. So this is very much kind of a conflict. They definitely have a bias. They definitely have an agenda. And I would even say that the word choice that they're using is very inflammatory, right? They're trying to get people worked up and upset about this by using the word plunders and disturbs. So these two examples show clearly that Article A is more informative and Article B is more persuasive. So this is essentially the CRAAP test in a nutshell: currency, relevance, accuracy, authority, and purpose. Whenever you are finding a source or using outside research, make sure that you are evaluating for these metrics.